Let's talk about two different approaches to tackle probabilities problems. The first method involves only doing one fraction. That is, following the definition, we count all the favorable outcomes and total outcomes. Here, it's very important that you look for the phrase, what is the probability? This phrase usually goes at the beginning of the question, which is usually the last part of a problem. Whatever comes before that phrase, what is the probability, should refer to what always happens. That is, they inform you certain conditions for counting the total number of outcomes. But whatever comes after the phrase, what is the probability, should be the restriction. That means the favorable outcomes whose possibility of happening we want to measure. Sometimes you need to use counting methods in both numerator and denominator, especially when the event we are talking about is a compound event. So basically the method 1 means calculating this fraction. What cases do they want to happen? Okay, you count this number and then divide by the number of cases that always happen when the event occurs in a more general way. Let's see this with an example. Two six-sided dice are thrown and the numbers are added. What's the probability that the sum of the numbers on the dice is 5? Well, first we identify our pivot phrase. What is the probability? So we should check out what comes before and after that phrase. What comes before refers to what always happens. So this is the criteria to count the number of ways in which the event of the throwing of two dice can happen. So here we indicate this in the denominator. We're counting the manners in which two dice can be thrown together. And what comes after the probability, that refers to the restriction. So here, we're considering the ways in which the sum of two dice can be 5. So here, we note that now. The sum of the numbers is 5. So you can see that what is written here shows all the possible cases, combinations of the numbers in two dice, so that you get a sum of 5. If you count them, there are totally 4 cases. On the other hand, when you consider the total number of ways in which two six-sided dice can be thrown together, you could see that all the combinations can be enumerated. That would be too long to count manually. But we can use here the principle of multiplication. Throwing two dice at the same time and counting the ways, the number of ways in which the two dice can be thrown, is equivalent to using the principle of multiplication here for two individual events that each can be counted in 6 different manners, because each die can be thrown in 6 different ways. So if we multiply the number of ways in which each of the dice can be thrown, we get 6 times 6, which is 36 actually. So we can simplify here, we get 1/9. That would be the probability that responds to this question. So the first approach is basically using the definition of probability. No matter what the event is, whether it is a single event or a compound event, you can always use counting methods to calculate the numerator and the denominator. But sometimes the calculation of the number of options in the numerator must be done manually.